To understand why this story hurt so much, you first have to understand who Sébastien Chabal was before everything changed. Because before the billboards, before the beard, before the nickname, before he became one of the most recognizable rugby players on earth, he was just a working class kid from France. There was no perfect rugby pathway waiting for him, no academy machine, no family dynasty pushing him towards the professional game. In fact, when Chabal first tried rugby as a child, he didn't even like it. He gave it a go, hated it, and walked away. And that's what makes the beginning of his story so unusual. Most rugby legends feel like they were built for the sport from birth. Chabal's story feels different. He came to the game late. He was working in a factory. He was clocking in, using machines, living a life that looked nothing like the glamorous version of professional sport. And then rugby found him again. At 16, he gave the game another chance because a couple of friends dragged him along to a local club. This time, something clicked. The physicality made sense. The aggression made sense. The size, the strength, the intensity, all the things that made him different suddenly became his greatest weapons. And from there, he rose fast. He climbed through French rugby, made it to Bourgoin-Jallieu, and became a professional player in the top 14. Just think about that for a second. One moment he was working on a factory floor. Not long after, he was smashing into players in one of the toughest rugby leagues in the world. But even then, nobody knew what he was about to become. The real turning point came when Chabal moved to England and joined Sale Sharks in 2004. At Sale, he became more than a powerful forward. He became a presence. You know those players who changed the feeling of a stadium just by touching the ball? That was Chabal. Every carry felt dangerous. Every tackle felt personal. He didn't just hit people, he made the entire crowd react. He had this wild, unpredictable energy, like nobody quite knew what was about to happen, including the defenders standing in front of him. And Sale didn't just get a cult hero, they got a winner. In his first season, Sale won the European Challenge Cup. The next season, they won the Guinness Premiership, beating Leicester Tigers in the final. In 2 seasons, Chabal had lifted 2 major trophies and had become one of the most talked about players in English rugby. But while his game was growing, so was the image. The long hair, the huge beard, the stare, the way he looked like he'd been pulled out of a cave and dropped straight into a rugby match. The nickname was inevitable, the Caveman. And once that image met the violence of his playing style, Chabal stopped being just a rugby player. He became a character, a brand, a symbol, the kind of player even casual fans recognized instantly. Then came 2007. France hosted the Rugby World Cup, and the country needed a face for the tournament. Rugby still wasn't loved equally everywhere in France. In some parts of the country, especially the north, the sport needed a figure who could grab attention immediately. Chabal was perfect. He was raw, he was physical, he looked unforgettable. His face was everywhere. Posters, magazines, adverts, products, merchandise. The media even had a name for it, Chabalmania. But here's the important part. He wasn't just famous because of the look. On the pitch, he backed it up. The 2007 World Cup turned him into a global rugby icon, and the moment that sealed the legend came in the quarter-final against New Zealand. France versus the All Blacks, the tournament favourites, one of the most feared teams in world sport. Before kick-off, the All Blacks performed the haka, and instead of stepping back, France walked forward. Right at the front was Chabal, staring straight ahead, completely still, completely locked in. It became one of those rugby images people never forget. Then France won, 20 points to 18. One of the great World Cup upsets. And by the end of that tournament, Chabal had become something rugby rarely produced back then, a true mainstream superstar. He had the look, the power, the highlight moments, the personality, and the mythology. At his peak, he was reportedly the highest paid rugby player on the planet, higher than some of the most technically gifted players of his generation. Not bad for a man who had once been working in a factory. And this is where the story should feel like a fairy tale. A late starter finds rugby. Rugby changes his life. He becomes a cult hero in England, an icon in France, and one of the most recognizable players in the world. But this is not where the story ends, because behind the roar of the crowds, behind the posters, behind the beard, and behind every bone-rattling tackle, something else was building quietly. The cost. Chabal played 62 times for France. He won 2 Six Nations titles. He went to 2 Rugby World Cups. He played 16 years as a professional. And if you watched him play, you know this was not a player who avoided contact. He chased it. That was his game. That was his identity. He carried hard. He tackled hard. He ran into collisions that most players would try to avoid. He gave rugby exactly what fans loved him for: impact, violence, fearlessness, and spectacle. But here's the question nobody was really asking at the time. What does that do to a person over 16 years? Not just the broken bones, not just the bruises, not just the injuries you can strap up, ice down, or recover from in the off-season. What about the damage you can't see? Chabal played in an era where rugby's understanding of head injuries was not where it is today. There were no head injury assessments in the way we know them now. There were no modern concussion protocols protecting players the same way. The culture was simple. If you could get up, you carried on. And in that era, men like Chabal became legends partly because they kept getting up. That was the badge of honor. Get hit, get up, go again. You might be wondering, how many collisions does a player like that go through in a career? Not hundreds, not thousands, potentially tens of thousands. Every tackle, every carry, every clean out, every ruck, every training session, every match, every moment where the body stops, suddenly the head snaps and the brain absorbs force, even if nobody calls it a concussion. And that is what makes the next part so hard to hear. Years after retiring, Chabal sat down for an interview. He was calm, thoughtful, still involved in rugby, still working as a pundit. From the outside, he looked like a man who had moved smoothly into life after the game. Then he was asked about his memories of his career, and his answer stopped people cold. He said he did not remember it. Not a few matches, not one bad season, not one blurry tournament. He said he did not remember a single second of his professional rugby career. 16 years, 62 caps for France, World Cups, Six Nations titles, Sale Sharks glory, the roar of stadiums, the haka, the posters, the moments that made him famous. Gone. And the tragedy didn't stop at rugby. Chabal also spoke about his childhood memories and how some of them felt uncertain. He wasn't even sure if they were real memories or just stories he'd heard so many times that they had become familiar. Then came the detail that makes the whole story even more painful. He said he no longer remembers the birth of his daughter. The same daughter whose arrival was connected to the beard, the image, the look that helped make him famous. That personal moment, one of the most important moments of his life, is gone too. And this is where the story becomes bigger than rugby highlights. Because Chabal did not come out and blame rugby directly. He did not point fingers. He did not say with certainty that the game caused his memory loss. In fact, he was careful. He admitted he did not know whether it was rugby, time, or something else. That matters. But he also did not take back what he said. The memories were still gone. And that alone is heartbreaking. Because the world remembers Sébastien Chabal. Rugby fans remember the hits. They remember the beard. They remember the All Blacks quarter-final. They remember the atmosphere he created every time he touched the ball. But the man who lived those moments says he cannot remember them. And sadly, Chabal is not the only former rugby player whose memories have disappeared. Steve Thompson, England's World Cup winning hooker in 2003, has spoken about having no memory of that tournament, no memory of the final, no memory of being part of the greatest moment in English rugby history. Imagine that. You help win a World Cup. Millions of people remember where they were when it happened. Fans can replay the moment in their heads instantly. But you, the man who was actually there, feel like you are watching a stranger on a screen. Then there is Alex Popham, the former Wales international, who was diagnosed with traumatic brain injury, early onset dementia, and probable CTE. His story, like Thompson's, has become part of a much wider conversation about what rugby did and did not understand about repeated head impacts. And by late 2023, hundreds of former professional players had taken legal action against rugby authorities, claiming they were not properly protected during their careers. That doesn't mean every story is exactly the same. It doesn't mean every case has the same cause. But it does mean rugby has had to face a brutal question. What happens when the same physicality that makes the sport beautiful also leaves some of its heroes paying a price years later? Because rugby is built on sacrifice. That is why people love it. The courage, the collisions, the willingness to put your body where most people would not put a hand. But Chabal's story forces us to look at the other side of that sacrifice, the side that doesn't show up in highlight reels, the side that doesn't get a trophy lift, the side that appears years later when the stadium is quiet, the boots are put away, and a man looks back at the greatest years of his life and finds nothing there. That is why this may be the most tragic story in rugby history. Not because Sébastien Chabal was forgotten, but because he became unforgettable to everyone except himself. The fans remember him, the sport remembers him, the old clips remember him, the photos remember him, but he doesn't. And maybe that is the saddest part of all. Chabal gave rugby moments the world will never forget, but the cruelest twist is that he cannot remember giving them. So when we watch those clips now, maybe we should see more than just the caveman, more than the beard, the tackles, the myth, and the marketing machine. We should see a man who gave everything to the game, and we should remember him with respect, not just for how hard he hit, but for what those hits may have cost him. Because rugby legends are not just highlights, they are people. And sometimes, the stories that matter most are not the ones that make us cheer. They are the ones that make us stop, think, and remember what the players themselves no longer can. If you want more rugby stories like this, the ones behind the tackles, the legends, and the moments fans never forget, subscribe to the channel, because this game has more stories than any scoreboard could ever tell.